Well, thanks for joining me once again and welcome back to my world of classic dirt bikes. Now in this featured video we're going to take a very brief look at Scottish Twinshock champion Paul Chiappa's 1981 490 Maico. Now if you are familiar with the name Paul Chiappa, you will already know that he is Scotland's most successful Twinshock racing rider, riding these very formidable 1981 490 Maicos. Now the chassis of this machine is basically a 1981 490 Maico built around this very unique nickel plated frame and that superb heavy duty swing arm. Now naturally Paul has a few examples of these 81 490 Maicos in his collection, but the model we are featuring here is of course his more favoured piston port 490 Maico. Paul also races a 1981 reed valve Maico 490, but this particular bike is Paul's preferred weapon of choice, this lovely piston port motor. Now the rear and front suspension units on this bike are all maintained and serviced by Paul on his own, as he of course is a registered K-Tech suspension specialist. So when it came to the suspension on these bikes, Paul set the bike up specifically for his own weight and style of riding. Now many of the other parts like the slimline tank, the seat, the side panels etc. were all sourced from Bill Brown at World Sport, and these lovely graphics for the tank and side panels were of course supplied by Alan Reid at MXM Graphics. Now of course Paul has in the past been Scottish Twinshock champion on at least 16 occasions riding these 490 Maicos, and in fact in 2018 has just secured his 17th title. Now I'm sure you don't need me to tell you the history and the legacy of these fantastic 1981 490 Maicos, but it is sufficient to say that they are renowned for making loads and loads of brute power. And although this machine is now coming up for 37 years old, with the right rider on board, these 1981 machines can give your modern day motocross racer a good run for their money. In fact, as I recall back in the day, dirt bike journalist Rick Super Hunky Simon wrote at the time that this machine has the finesse of a cannon being fired in a basketball court. He said the bike leaves you stunned, rocked, wide-eyed and weak-kneed, and in other words the 81 490 Maico does what every other machine has been promising to do but has never delivered. Now of course there are many examples of these 1981 490 Maicos racing in tracks around the world, and they can fetch good money for the right condition of bike. But fully restored 1981 490s can run into 5 figures. In fact, at an auction in Las Vegas recently, a fully restored version of this bike sold for $16,500. Now a few of the specifications of these 1981 bikes consisted of the engine of course, which was a 488cc motor, and it had a bore and stroke of 86 by 83 millimeters. Now it was also claimed that these machines put out 53 brake horsepower at the crank, and of course the motors were fed by this 40 millimeter Bing carburetor. The ignition of course was also supplied by that very reliable motoplat unit, and the engine of course was fed on a pre-mix of oil and gas, which was normally mixed at 50-1. The engine, of course, was a 5-speed gearbox with 2.5 gallons of fuel in the tank and had an all-up weight of 245 pounds. Now, of course, these machines were of a time where Maico got the geometry, the handling and the build of the perfect engine to fit into the superb handling chassis. Yes, without doubt, Maico built themselves a winner here, and when riders around the world are asked what was or is the best motocross bike ever built, the answer is always the same: the legendary 1981 490 Maico. Now, Paul, of course, has been racing these 490 Maicos for many years and is well acquainted with the idiosyncrasies of the motors and the chassis. And these are just a couple of pictures I captured off the bike when Paul raced it at the Vets Classic Motocross des Nations at Farleigh Castle in 2013. So I hope you enjoyed this very brief look at 17 times Scottish Twinshock champion Paul Chiappa's 1981 490 Maico. This video has been brought to you in association with VMX Magazine, the world's #1 publication for all your classic and vintage dirt bike motorcycles.